Rain hammered the windshield as James gripped the steering wheel tighter, jaw clenched. He stared at the young man in the hoodie who had just flipped him off and taken his parking spot. His spot, after 15 minutes of circling the crowded Trader Joe's lot. "You've got to be kidding me," James muttered, flinging open the car door. He was already out and marching across the wet asphalt before reason could catch up to him. His heart pounded, like it was trying to break out of his chest. The guy was still unloading his bike from the back of a beat-up Jeep, earbuds in, acting like nothing happened. "Hey, you saw me waiting, that was my spot." The guy looked up, pulled one earbud out. "What?" James was soaked now, but didn't care. "I was waiting for that space, you cut me off." The guy shrugged. "Man, it's a parking lot, first come, first serve." James felt the heat rise up his neck. "No, you don't get to act like this and pretend it's nothing." And then came the worst part. The guy smirked. Like James was some uptight dad who needed to cool off, that smirk hit harder than a punch. James didn't realize how close he'd gotten until the guy stepped back, holding his hands up. "Whoa, bro, back off. You gonna swing at me over a parking spot?" A flash of something, rage, shame, moved through James like lightning. His fists clenched. For half a second he actually considered it, and then he saw his own reflection in the Jeep's window. A 43-year-old man soaking wet, shouting at a stranger over asphalt. The image stunned him. "Forget it," James muttered, turning away. "It's not worth it." Back in his car, heart still pounding, he wiped rain from his face and stared ahead. The guy's voice rang in his ears. "You gonna swing at me over a parking spot?" Was that who he'd become? A man one annoyance away from exploding? He didn't go into the store, he didn't even move the car. He just sat there watching the rain bead across the windshield, mind spinning. His father had been like that. Volatile, ready to snap over spilled milk or a missed turn. James had sworn he'd be different, but lately he was tired. Work was draining him, marriage was on autopilot, and his teenage daughter barely looked up from her phone. He felt invisible, unheard, wound tight. A notification buzzed on his phone. A podcast, one he didn't remember subscribing to. How to Never Get Angry or Let Anyone Bother You. Lessons from Napoleon Hill. He stared at it. Coincidence? He hit play. "Anger is the enemy of clarity," the voice on the podcast said. "It is the mind surrendering control to emotion." James let the words sink in as the rain softened to a drizzle. He adjusted the rearview mirror, not because he needed to, but because he needed to do something with his hands. His knuckles were still white from earlier. "Napoleon Hill believed," the voice continued, "that your emotional reactions are the clearest sign of who really holds power over your life." James sighed. "Great," he muttered. "So Hoodie Kid owns me now." But something about the message scratched at a deeper place. A memory surfaced. He was 8, sitting at the kitchen table, hands trembling, trying not to spill milk. His father had just exploded because the radio was too loud. Control. That was always the theme. James had spent his adult life building boundaries to protect himself from chaos. A stable job in IT, a house with clean lines and smart locks, a marriage built on practical love, a schedule that rarely changed. And yet here he was, nearly ready to throw a punch because some stranger broke a rule he'd created in his head. He pressed pause. What was happening to him? The voice on the podcast was calm, composed, exactly the opposite of how James felt. He scrolled back and played the last line again. "Every time you react in anger, you're admitting that someone else can control you." He closed his eyes and leaned back against the headrest. The truth was, he had been angry a lot lately. Not just today, with colleagues who missed deadlines, with his daughter for rolling her eyes, with his wife for not noticing how hard he was trying to hold everything together, and the part that hurt most, no one seemed to care. His anger didn't change anything, it just exhausted him. He restarted the engine and pulled out of the lot, still unsure where he was going. The windshield wipers moved slowly like his thoughts. For once he didn't turn on music, no noise, just the road. As he drove, the voice in his earbuds shifted gears. "If you want to stop being angry, you have to stop being reactive. Learn to observe, not absorb. Don't own every opinion that brushes against you." James blinked. That hit harder than he expected. Observe, not absorb. What if that had been his mindset today? What if he had just noticed the kid stealing the spot, shrugged, and let it go? Would the world have ended? Would it have made him smaller or freer? A green light turned yellow ahead. James didn't speed up. He coasted to a gentle stop. For once, he didn't feel rushed, didn't feel the need to fight the flow. His phone buzzed again. 5 Ways to Build Mental Fortitude. Bonus episode. He smiled faintly. Maybe it was time to start listening to something besides his anger. The next morning, James walked into a local coffee shop he barely remembered existed. He used to come here years ago, back when his daughter was small enough to think foam art was magic. It smelled the same. Fresh grounds, baked scones, a hint of cinnamon. He stood in line, phone in pocket. No headphones, no podcast this time, just silence and people. The guy in front of him was arguing with the barista. "No, I said oat milk," he snapped. "This is regular milk, I can't drink this." "I'm sorry," the barista said gently. "I can remake it." The man scoffed. "Yeah, maybe don't screw it up this time." James watched her expression shift, just slightly, a crack in her composure. The kind of wound that doesn't bleed, but lingers. He felt something rise in his chest. "Say something," his old self whispered, but the new voice, the one from the podcast, interrupted. "Observe, not absorb." He watched the moment pass. The man took his drink and walked off, still mumbling. The barista shook her head once, then turned to him with a tired smile. "Hi, what can I get you?" "Black coffee." "And you handled that really well, by the way." She blinked, surprised. "Thanks, not everyone sees it." He nodded, slid a $5 tip into the jar. She smiled for real this time. James stepped aside, waiting for his drink, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he needed to fix everything. He could witness something ugly and choose not to carry it. The small victory felt big. He sat by the window, sipping slowly, watching people shuffle in and out. Life moved in imperfect patterns, people late, people annoyed, people in love with their phones. But beneath it all, it was just people. No one is trying to ruin your day, he thought. They're just trying to get through theirs. His phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. "Hey, can we talk tonight?" After Maddie's asleep, his chest tightened. The kind of text that carried weight, a storm warning. James stared at the screen, thumb hovering. He typed, "Of course, I'll be home early." He didn't ask what it was about, didn't press or panic. He let the text sit like a stone in a stream, not a flood. He went back to watching the street. A dog barked. A kid spilled juice. A cyclist yelled at a turning car. And through it all, James didn't flinch. He didn't insert himself, he breathed. The podcast had ended last night with a quote he couldn't shake. "No one can make you angry without your permission." Today, for once, he wasn't handing that permission out. James got home before sunset. The house was quiet, aside from the soft buzz of Maddie's tablet echoing down the hallway. He poked his head into her room. She barely looked up. "Dinner's in 10, he said gently. "We're ordering from that Thai place you like." "Cool," she murmured, eyes glued to the screen. He left her door cracked and headed to the kitchen. Melissa was already there, pulling takeout containers from a brown paper bag, hair tied up, sweatshirt worn. She looked tired, but not angry. That scared him more. "Smells good," James said, forcing a smile. She nodded. "Didn't think you'd actually come home early?" He sat at the counter, elbows on the cool marble, trying something new. They ate, mostly in silence. Maddie joined them briefly, picked at some rice, then disappeared again. When the dishes were cleared and the lights dimmed, Melissa poured 2 glasses of wine. James followed her to the living room. No TV, just them. She sat across from him, legs tucked under a blanket. "I've been thinking," she started, "about us, about how we handle things." James swallowed. "Okay. I feel like lately everything sets you off. Little things, big things. You come home wound up and it's like I have to read the room every night before I speak." He wanted to defend himself, wanted to say work had been brutal, that he was trying, but he stopped. Observe, not absorb, she continued. And Maddie's been watching. She's not a baby anymore. She sees the tension. She sees when you shut down or snap. That hit him harder than anything. I know, he said quietly. You're right. Melissa blinked, surprised. You do? He nodded. Something happened yesterday. I almost lost it on a guy in a parking lot, over nothing. And afterward I saw myself, really saw myself. I didn't like what I saw. She exhaled. Some of the weight in her shoulders lifted. I've been listening to this podcast, James said. It sounds cheesy, but it's helping me realize how much of my anger is about control, about trying to make everything fit into my version of the world. Melissa sipped her wine, watching him. I'm not saying it'll change overnight, he added, but I'm working on it. I don't want to be that kind of man. That kind of father. She leaned back, silent for a moment. That's all I wanted to hear, she said softly. They sat in the quiet. No fixing, no rushing, just a fragile kind of peace. James looked down at his hands, resting on his knees. I want to be better, he said. Melissa gave a small smile. Then let's start there. Monday morning came like a test. Rain again, of course. James sat in the parking garage at work, staring at the blinking cursor in an email draft he hadn't sent since Friday. It was the kind of passive-aggressive response he used to write too quickly, blaming Steve for the delayed report, copying the entire team, sharp enough to draw blood without ever using curse words. His finger hovered over delete, observe, not absorb. He exhaled and wiped the message clean. Then he picked up the phone and called Steve. The man answered after 2 rings. Hey, James, what's up? No blame, James told himself. Just clarity. Hey, Steve, I wanted to talk real quick about the Q2 numbers. I know they're late, but I'm wondering if you've hit a snag or just need backup. A pause. Honestly, Steve said, I've been drowning, man. I should have asked for help last week. Sorry for dropping the ball. James blinked. That was honest. No problem, he said. Let's fix it together. Want to loop in Diane and knock it out today? Yeah. Thanks, man. Seriously. James ended the call and sat still, surprised at how good it felt to not carry that tension, not turn it into poison. Maybe it hadn't been about Steve at all. Maybe it had been about feeling disrespected, overlooked. Napoleon Hill had said that resentment was slow suicide. Today, James chose not to drink it. He walked into the office lighter than usual. It didn't mean he wasn't tired, it didn't mean the work was easier. But the fight, the constant internal battle to defend his pride, felt a little less loud. Around lunchtime, he passed the break room and overheard 2 interns complaining. And he always acts like he's better than everyone, one whispered. I know, James is cool, but he gets intense, the other added, like scary intense sometimes. They didn't know he was standing around the corner. James didn't move, didn't confront, he just listened. The words stung, but he didn't absorb them. They were kids. Observations, not truth. Feedback, not identity. He walked away without being seen, took the stairs to clear his head. At the top landing, he stopped by a window and looked out at the city. Glass buildings, traffic. A man helping a woman with a broken umbrella on the corner. Everyone had something they were dealing with. Some carried it better than others. James was learning, slowly, how to carry his without dropping it on everyone else. He opened his notebook and wrote down one sentence. My peace is not up for negotiation. He underlined it twice. Then he turned the page and got back to work. It was Saturday morning, no rain. Sunlight poured through the kitchen windows as James stood barefoot, flipping pancakes, something he hadn't done in months. Maddie wandered in, rubbing her eyes, hoodie dragging past her knees. Smells good, she mumbled. He smiled. I made the blueberry kind, the ones you used to love. She shrugged, but sat at the table without a word. No headphones, no phone. That alone felt like a win. Melissa came in next, hair still messy from sleep, blinking at the stack of pancakes like it was a small miracle. James kissed her on the cheek. No podcast this morning, she asked. Listened to it already, he said. They talked about emotional discipline, about how sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's strength. She raised her eyebrows. "You're really sticking with it." He nodded. "I'm tired of being a prisoner to things I can't control." They sat together, the three of them, eating in a kind of calm that used to feel rare. James didn't check his phone once. He didn't scan for news or work emails. He just ate and listened to the sound of forks on plates, the rhythm of normalcy. Later that afternoon, he and Maddie walked through the park near their house. They hadn't done that in ages. A slow, aimless walk. The air was crisp. Dogs barked in the distance, and someone played soft jazz from a portable speaker near the fountain. "Mum said you've been, different," Maddie said suddenly. James chuckled. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know, calmer, I guess. Less mad at stuff." He nodded. "I'm working on that." Did something happen? James thought about the parking lot, about the podcast, about the choice he made not to let a stranger dictate his peace. "Yeah," he said, "I realized being angry all the time wasn't making anything better. It was just making me tired, and probably hard to be around." She kicked a rock, then looked up at him. "It's been better lately." James felt that land deep inside him. They stopped by the edge of the duck pond. Kids tossed bits of bread, laughter carrying on the breeze. James leaned on the rail, watching the water ripple outward. Napoleon Hill had once said that no man is free until he masters himself. James used to think that meant shutting down emotion. Now he understood. It meant not being ruled by it, feeling everything but choosing how to respond. Maddie stood beside him, quiet, present. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded note he'd been carrying all week. He handed it to her. She opened it and read aloud, "My peace is not up for negotiation." She looked up at him. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "It means no one else gets to decide how I feel. Only I do." She tucked the note into her pocket. "Cool," she said. And in that simple word, James heard everything he needed. Sunday evening wrapped itself in quiet. The sky outside faded into soft orange, and the hum of the dishwasher was the only sound in the house. James stood in the kitchen, towel in hand, drying the last plate. As he reached to hang it, he noticed something new on the fridge, his own handwriting, the note. "My peace is not up for negotiation." But he hadn't put it there. He looked closer. Someone had taped it up neatly. Maddie's handwriting sat just below in bright blue marker. "Mine isn't either," he smiled. That little piece of paper had gone from his notebook to her pocket, and now to their refrigerator door, right between a dentist appointment reminder and a takeout menu. Melissa walked in, holding a cup of tea. She saw him looking at the note and leaned against the counter. "She asked me for tape earlier," she said. "Didn't say why." James nodded slowly, touched in a way he couldn't quite explain. "Do you think she gets it?" he asked. Melissa took a sip, then met his eyes. "I think she gets more than we give her credit for." James stared at the note a moment longer, not as a motivational quote, but as a seed, something planted in his own chaos that might now grow through someone else's storms. He reached for a magnet and added it next to the tape. The note didn't look out of place. It looked like it belonged.